So the final piece of the puzzle for the BerraQuotes app case study is the test driver implementation. This is what's actually going to make the whole thing run and give us back BerraQuotes. And so we're going to take a look at how that's implemented. And again, as usual, you can find the code at this URL. So we're now back in the IntelliJ project, and we're going to take a look at the BerraQuotes test file. And this is the program that makes it all work. And you can see it's got some interesting annotations right off the top of the bat. It's got something that says Spring Boot Test. And Spring Boot Test says this is a test program, and it's going to be testing the BerraQuotes application. So that says go and automatically start up this application and then make calls to it. That's what this is saying. It says start that application implicitly by that use of the annotation. It's also defined as a Spring Boot configuration, which indicates that this is a Spring Boot application configuration. So let's take a look at how it's designed. You can see it uses all the good annotation stuff that we have with Spring. It makes an auto-wired field that's connected to the BerraQuotesClient. And we just looked at BerraQuotesClient, so you kind of know what that does. We're going to have a little field here that keeps track of the number of quote requests we want to make. In this case, we're going to make 5, but we could make 20 or whatever. And then finally, we have a single method called run test, which is annotated to be a test. So that just says run this as a test. And we'll see how that works when we run it in just a moment. Over here, you can see what we have for the code. So we're going to go first and call the getAllQuotes method on the test client, which will give us back a list of all the BerraQuotes. We then figure out how many there were. I think there are 55. We then go ahead and make a bunch of random indices. So this is kind of a fun little helper method. So we say, I want to have 5 random indices between essentially 1 and the number of BerraQuotes there are. So here's make random indices. So make random indices goes and creates a new random number generator object and says, make me a stream of number of indices, random numbers between 1 and the number of quotes, and box those things up, because this comes back as a stream of native ints, box those into a stream of integer types, and then turn that into a list. So we make ourselves a list of random indices within the range we care about, and then we go ahead and we say we're printing out however many BerraQuote results we got back, and we're going to print out size of them. And this is going to be the number that we get back here, because we're just going to get back 5. And then the next thing we do, and then we go ahead and we print all the BerraQuotes out that we got back, all of those quotes, all the random quotes. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and say, hey, test client, please find all the BerraQuotes that have the word baseball in them. And you know that that's done in a case-insensitive way, so it'll ignore whether it's capitalized B or lowercase b. We get back another list of BerraQuotes, which contain the word baseball, and we go ahead and we print those out. So that's what the test program does. Let's go ahead and run the test program. You can see we go up here, this little drop-down menu, and we click on the green button, and that will go ahead and start compiling everything. If you want to see what it's doing, you can open up the little build window down here. So it'll start compiling. Knock on wood, I haven't broken the code between this morning when I tested it and now. And then over here, you can see that once the tests get instantiated, then things will start to run. And what happens with a test is it'll indicate whether it succeeded or failed. And you'll find that out when you run the test for our program for assignment 1A. You'll see that if it works properly, you have a bunch of green check marks. This test worked because it really wasn't doing anything interesting. Here's the results we get back. So we get back 5 random BerraQuotes out of a total of 55, and these are the quote IDs that were generated randomly. And it's got one of the classic ones. You can observe a lot by just watching. It's all kinds of gobbledygook. And then we have 2 BerraQuotes that contain the word baseball, one of which is baseball is 90% mental, the other half is physical. And in baseball, you don't know nothing. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it's a BerraQuote, so you're not supposed to know what it means. And then we're done, and the test shuts down. So this gives you, hopefully, a good overview of how to write a controller and a service as part of a microservice with Spring WebMVC. Notice the use of synchronous calls where we're passing lists and returning lists and so on, or passing individual parameters like strings, for example. And it'll also illustrate how to write the client side, especially the proxy part. And all those pieces are things that you'll need to understand in order to be able to write your code. And something else I just want to point out here, again, is that sometimes you need to put annotations in your controller parameter lists, like this is a path variable. This is a request param. Other times you don't. And if they're native type, not native types, if they're simple types like string or integer, you don't have to put request param. It doesn't hurt anything if you do. It's probably more consistent if you do, but it's not required. OK, so that's the end of that example.